Okay, welcome everybody. My name's Bill Bealey from the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. I've got two colleagues with me today, David Cameron and Christina Martin Hernandez. We're going to present outputs from the modelling uncertainty for decision-making on ammonia mitigation with trees in the landscape, MUDMAT project, which has been funded through the Landscape Decisions Programme as part of the UK Research and Innovation Programme. So, first thing to think about is what are the key ammonia sources in the landscape. So we have four main types of ammonia source. That's from housing emissions, emissions from storage, emissions when you're spreading fertilizer, and that's the mineral form of fertilizer, and the other spreading of manure and slurry. So ammonia is emitted in these four main sources. And then for ammonia in general across the UK, ammonia is predominantly, as you can see in this pie chart, coming from agriculture. This is actually across the European Union. So 94% of ammonia is coming from the agriculture, with a few other sources from elsewhere. In the UK, this is the emissions map of ammonia of 2018, latest set showing you the sort of hotspots of areas of ammonia which pretty much map onto where intensive agricultural systems exist. Why is ammonia a problem? Well, effectively, when the ammonia is emitted into the atmosphere, it deposits onto semi-natural vegetation. So you're in effect fertilizing these sort of more poorly nutrient source type of vegetation ecosystems. So you can see from this graph here that the more end deposition that's coming into the system, into a habitat or ecosystem, this is the graph, the species richness. The species richness declines with increased end deposition. This is quite a nice study done across acid grasslands. So, and then there are more visible damage from excess ammonia. So here's a good example to show you of sphagnum from a bog, raised bog. On the left is a nice clean clump of sphagnum from a cleaner part of the habitat, while on the right, this is from a sphagnum patch, which is very close to a poultry shed, which is emitting ammonia. So you have problems with excess nitrogen, and it's sort of going into sort of green algae, and the structure is declining. So really nice visible symptom there. And across the UK, we map critical load exceedance for certain habitats. So critical load is like an environmental limit that's set for certain habitats. So anything above that is seen as an exceedance and likely to have detrimental effects to the habitat. And this is the latest year highlighted down here. Habitats across the top here. So 54% of acid grasslands across the UK exceed their critical loads for nitrogen. It's more for certain habitats than others. Bogs about 40, quite a few tree and woodland, natural woodlands, quite high. Quite a few most of them are exceeding their critical load. So, we need to be looking to get them down. There has been reduction, of course, over the years, which is good news. These are sort of reductions we're getting across the country. Now, there are plenty of suitable ammonia mitigation measures out there. I'm just going to touch on some of those. So for storage, you can put a cover over the top, and you could indicate sort of percentages that you can get in reduced emissions. On the right here, this is a dairy parlour where you have these scrapers going up and down, keeping the surfaces clean. For spreading, it's a trailing shoe system where the slurry is directly put into contact with, in this case, a grassland, and it's much preferable than to using a splash plate. This is the reduction you can get with that. And there's even measures where you can reduce the protein in diet for livestock, which eventually come at the other end, it's reducing the emissions of ammonia too. And ammonia really becoming quite a policy focus, of course, now across all of the UK with various clean air strategies for the UK and Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. And this document gives a lot of information on the best practice for reducing ammonia emissions, and these will often be are covered in that guidance. However, thinking about farm trees as a mitigation option, well, across the landscape, trees have multiple benefits on the farm. So this is a poultry shed, and this has been treed initially for a couple of reasons. It's used for the free range laying hens to range, so they actually get outside the building and they can range in the trees. That improves their welfare. And it's also used, the trees are then also used in a sort of landscaping way as a screening around housing units. However, there are, of course, as you may know, multiple benefits of trees. So we're looking at ammonia mitigation through trees capturing ammonia. So we'll talk about that mainly in this talk. But also other things supporting forestation, carbon sequestration, and things like that. So multiple benefits across the landscape with trees, and we're focusing on one of those. So ammonia and tree belts, what is happening here? So here we have a livestock building which is emitting, and you have the direction of wind coming, let's say the prevailing wind is coming from this direction. By planting a tree belt downwind of housing, which are quite high sources of ammonia, hotspots of ammonia, you can do a couple of things. You can recapture ammonia in the canopy, which is great, and you can also, the canopy has an effect of increasing dispersion of the plume, so it dilutes it more and more quickly, so you can have lower concentrations on the other side of the woodland. So again, it's all about trying to quantify what is the percentage reduction through the trees. I mean, there's plenty of studies showing you the effect of trees on air pollutants and capturing air pollutants and particles. Well, ammonia, there's the same effect. So it's just trying to quantify it now and see how much the trees are taking up. We've done some previous research back in 2010. We're doing some more at the moment, which I can't present today, but we've done some wind tunnel experiments, releasing ammonia through Christmas trees and measuring how much the canopy is taking up. So you get some example of some of the capture potential there. This is a couple of chicken sheds where we looked at the effect of, this is actually Sitka spruce plantation, but showing you the effect of having trees downwind through a transect. You see these transect points of sampling. And we've also done some modeling, and we've done some modeling with the MODAS model, which David Cameron is going to talk particularly about in his presentation. And we've used the MODAS model in this work to validate, we've used the measurements from the wind tunnel in this experiment to validate some of the MODAS, and it was showing quite nice predictions. So what is really going on with the canopy and the pollutant plume as it's coming into contact with the vegetation, the tree surface? Well, there's something called deposition velocity. That's how quickly gases and aerosols deposit onto surfaces. And here is a table showing you a number of different vegetation types, with heathland, grassland, short and long, arable, forest. And this is the deposition velocity. What it shows here, this is from a paper of Gallagher, showing you that for deposition to forest is almost double that to grassland and heathland, for example. And it's primarily to do with this function here. This is the what's called the surface roughness length. It's a function of canopy height and wind speed. So trees have a higher surface roughness length, which aids the deposition to the leaf surface, and a higher deposition velocity. Actually, what's happening at the leaf surface is quite interesting. So there are a number of resistances that the gas molecule or aerosol has to go through to get through to the leaf cuticle or the stomata. So there's different resistances it has to go through: an aerodynamic resistance, there's a canopy resistance, and also the resistances around the cuticle of the leaf surface and the stomata. The deposition velocity here is just the sum. You sum them all up, all the resistance you sum up, and it's the inverse of that, your deposition velocity. And once you have a concentration, you can work out your deposition velocity. However, importantly for ammonia, just to note that there's a bidirectional flow of ammonia once in the stomata. So once the ammonia goes through to the stomata into what's called the apoplast within the cell, it reaches a certain concentration of ammonia. If that is higher than the concentration outside, it's actually an emission out of the stomata. So we have this stomatal compensation point where there's a kind of equilibrium going on between the concentrations in the cell, the plant cell, and the air. And there's also some process with the soil. Just to say, David will touch on this. This part of the sort of the process with the leaf is in the model that we're going to be showing you. So we've put this stomatal compensation point into the model, and there's some further reading here about bidirectional ammonia exchange in this MASAD paper. On the actual model itself, then it's a combination of OpenFoam, which is a fluid dynamics model, and MODAS, which is the deposition model. And this is a sort of schema that we set up to put into the model to make it run. Has a number of things we need to cover in that. So first of all, we need to know something about the source area and the height of the source. We need to know the strength of the emission and how many particles we're going to be releasing, and you can set this in the tool. Then we can set up our canopies. So we have height of the canopy and the depth of the canopy, and we can set up different heights and different depths of canopies. You can have multiple configurations of that, and we have the wind coming in from this direction. So you set it off and you run it, and it runs through, and it follows the plume as it goes through the canopy, and it does a couple of things that David will discuss in his presentation. Now, we've done many runs of this to then develop this into our tree calculator tool. So this is an online web tool, and pretty much all the data that we get from the tool, from the model, is put into this tool as a lookup table. So it's very simple to use. The user has a few inputs, puts in a location, soil type, and the canopy depth in here. Just to let you know that at this point, we're linking in with Forest Research ecosystem database on trees, which brings back a number of things, but mainly we're interested in height and suitable species. And the height we're doing over a number of years. So we're looking at the height in this location based on this soil type for certain species over 5, 15, 25, and 50 years as the tree grows. So the user will get information about the suitable species, which are down here, and then he'll choose, he or she will choose a certain species. At the moment, we're choosing a single species for a main canopy, and potentially if you want to put a backstop canopy in, it's like an evergreen canopy as well. So once you've selected that, it'll draw this graph, and it'll show you how much capture over 5, 10, 15, 25, up to 50 years you can get potentially get from planting that type of tree belt. Christina will show you a demonstration of that, so you'll get a very good idea of how that works. So we'll share that with you in the last presentation. So that's, for me, that's all I wanted to say, and I'm going to pass over to David, and he'll take on the rest of the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So I'm just going to give some details now about what we did in the project. So first of all, we wanted to replace the model in the web tool. And the reason for that, it was a very simple empirical model that was based upon results from MODAS Thetis. And one of the issues with it was that we had no quantification of how reliable this very simple empirical model was. And indeed no methodology for how to work out that reliability. And really, ideally, what we'd like to use is the MODAS model itself. That was the model output that Bill showed a minute ago. That's the one that's been validated in the wind tunnel experiments. But the model that we had at the start of the project was not portable at all. We could only run it on a PC laptop, and it was very slow. So at the beginning of the project, we were very fortunate to have colleagues in Benjamin Lube, who's the creator of MODAS, and William Lassman, and they suggested that we replace the Thetis model with OpenFoam, which is an open source model. It's a computational fluid dynamics model, and it explicitly models the turbulent eddies in the boundary layer and the transfer in the boundary layer. And into that model, we built in a canopy model. And William had created a Python coupler from OpenFoam to the MODAS model itself, which is a Lagrangian model. So Lagrangian means that you follow the air parcels, whereas Eulerian means the air parcels, you're in a fixed place and the air parcels go past you. And as Bill said, the MODAS model, it's got this bidirectional stomata. So that's great, and it's been validated in the Christmas trees experiments, as Bill explained. So then we ported the model onto this big machine, big Lotus cluster, which you can see is quite a significant compute capacity. And that meant we could run hundreds of runs of the model at the same time. So each single run of the model takes about 45 to 90 minutes. But the combination of replacing Thetis and porting it onto this big cluster on the Jasmine machine meant that we got a really significant speed up. And that was great, because at the start of the project, we thought we'd probably have to emulate the model in some way, but actually no, we can run the model itself and just collect all the results in a really big database. So once we'd ported the model, we made a sensitivity analysis. The model has got particles in it, and we worked out that we needed about 80,000 particles in order to get robust results. So I'm just going to move on now to talk about some of the choices that we made in setting up the runs. So the first one is on spatial variation. We wanted some variation across the UK and Northern Ireland. And we have access to this great meteorological data set, CHESS data set. So we decided on the resolution of 100 by 100 kilometers to give that spatial variation. And that gave us about 50 different squares. And you can see them marked on the right-hand side there. So we took a decade of MET data and averaged over that to give us a climatology to reduce any interannual variability. We also wanted a time variation, because both the seasonal cycle and the diurnal cycle are very important. So we chose 4 time points throughout the year to represent the seasonal cycle. You can see them marked in red on the figure on the right-hand side. And then we also wanted a diurnal variation. So we had 2 time points, a day point and a night point, with a daily minimum and maximum temperature. And we also imposed a cycle on the solar radiation to give us a time point at 3 AM and 3 PM. So we also needed to make choices about the shape of the trees. So generally there's 2 canopies, a main canopy, and it often has a deciduous canopy. So we chose a kind of lollipop type shape for that. And as Bill described, we often have a backstop canopy as well, and that's often conifers. So for that, we have a Christmas tree type shape. And then we needed to choose a leaf area index. So the main canopy has got a spacing of about 2.5 meters, and the backstop a spacing of 2 meters. And talking to colleagues, Mike Perks at Forest Research, we came up with a LAI time series. So the idea is that the LAI increases to a maximum of 15 years, dips a bit at 25 years, and then increases again to 50 years. So this is why we chose the time variation that Bill described, 5, 15, 25, and 50 years to try and give us that variation in LAI. We also tested whether we needed to have a seasonal variation in LAI for the deciduous trees, or whether we could use an annual average. And as Bill's described in the web tool, there's various different choices you can make in terms of canopy depths. And so the choices that we have are 20, 30, 40, and 50 for the main canopy, and 0, 10, and 20 for the backstop. So you can actually cut out the backstop canopy completely and just have one main canopy. And as Bill described as well, in the tool, you choose a soil type and a location. And then the tool uses this model, the ESC model from Forest Research, Ecological Site Classification Model, which is an online model, and it predicts heights. There's two different models, two different ESC models, one for GB and one for Northern Ireland. And with the heights that we have, the first time point is at year 5, and we chose for that to have the heights every 0.5 meters. For the other years, the 15, 25, and 50 years, we collected all the possible heights within a grid square and made a histogram, and we kept all the heights that were common, and heights that were very rare we got rid of. So finally, I want to talk a bit about reliability. That was one of the things that concerned us about the original very simple empirical model. And we're going to estimate reliability by looking at uncertainty. So MODAS, like most models, it's got parameters in it that are uncertain. And talking to the model experts, we came up with 7 parameters that we thought were the most important. And we came up with a range for each of those 7 parameters. That's listed in this table on the right-hand side. So we've got a min, a mode, and a max. So most of those ranges came from a literature search. And we use those ranges to form beta distributions. This is a bell-shaped like distribution, but it doesn't have to be symmetric. The center of the distribution can be skewed to one side. So we've got 7 parameters. We need to sample that space, that 7-dimensional space, and we use a space filling design, so-called Latin hypercube, in order to do that. And this gives us a sample of 1,000. So for each member of that sample of parameters, we ran MODAS 100 times, and then took the average over that 100 times to try and ensure that any variation that we find in MODAS is just due to parameter changes. So with our sample of 1,000, that gave us 100,000 runs in total. And after the averaging, we get back to a sample of 1,000. So after running MODAS with that sample, we find a range of 63% in the ammonia recapture. And you'll see that in the tool in a minute. When we look at the predictions from the tool, you'll see that I think it's marked in gray, which will show the uncertainty. So it gives you a measure of the reliability of the model. So it's quite a large amount of uncertainty that we've got currently in the model. But as we're able to take measurements at farms of percentage recapture, we can use that in a Bayesian calibration to try and reduce the uncertainty in these parameters and bring that down. So we hope to do that in the future. So I'm gonna stop now and pass on to Christina, who's going to take you through a demonstration.
Thank you, David. So I'm showing you in the screen the website farmtrees2air.ch.ac.uk, and we created this website for farmers and landowners that want to mitigate ammonia. So there is a guidance here under guidance in the main menu, and then the Ammonia Calculator is here. So if you click in the Ammonia Calculator, you go to the tool Bill and David were talking about in their previous presentation. So it's a very simple tool. So first you need to select a location from, you can select the location clicking in the map, or you can select the location just pasting or typing your location in eastern and northern. Then you choose your soil type. Let's choose brown earth. There is a guidance for soil type here. So it can help you to choose the correct soil type of your land. Then you can see some information is starting to appear. This information is a very general information, just latitude and longitude, location, and very general information about the site. This is coming from this forest research model that is the ecological site classification. And it's very simple. You just need to choose a location, and then you need to choose types of nutrient and moisture regime. And you have all the data about suitability for your trees. So we get this data, and here, down here in this table below, as you can see, the species are ordered by suitability from the 0.95 to the less suitable. And then we are extracting from this as well the height at 5 years and at several other years. I'm going to show you the next. The next thing you can do is choosing your tree species, which again is ordered by suitability. So let's choose a tree species. And then the backstop, let's choose that one. And the information starts to appear right now in the screen. So again, this information is coming from this model. And as you can see here, there is a graph. And this graph shows the ammonia recapture at 5, 15, 25, and 50 years, as David explained before. You can also see the 63% of uncertainty at both sides. So that's the gray area here. And you can see the year and the total recapture, and then also the recapture in the backstop and the main canopy. If you increase your canopy depth, so that's the length that you have the trees planted, you can see that the total recapture increases. So you will have more recapture here, and the graph changes. And again, we produce a guidance, which is in this section of the website. So the farmers or the landowners will know how to best plant trees in order to mitigate ammonia. And that's all I wanted to say. So thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you.